Mickey Holler is a confident defense attorney in Los Angeles who operates from the back of his Lincoln Town car. As Holler walks to court, he is approached by a bail bondsman named Val Valenzuela, who informs him about a high-profile case involving the Playboy son of real estate mogul Mary Windsor. The son, Louis Relate, is accused of violently assaulting a prostitute. Val informs Holler that he has persuaded the family to hire him as their defense attorney. Louis has a hearing at noon in Inglewood, and Val wants Holler to convince them to use Val's bail bond services instead of putting their Malibu house as collateral for the bail. Holler, pressed for time, persuades the bailiff to bring out his client, Harold Casey, ahead of the list by offering a better Christmas present this year. Holler informs Casey that he hasn't been paid the rest of what he's owed, so he gets an extension on the court date and warns him to have the money paid if he wants him to represent him. He then gets into the Lincoln Town car and tells his driver, Earl, to hurry to Inglewood. On the way, they are stopped by a biker gang led by Eddie Vogel, who's unhappy that Holler is stalling Harold Casey's case. Holler reminds Eddie that if he doesn't get paid, he doesn't work. Holler demands 10 grand instead of the 5 Harold thought they had to pay, but agrees because Harold is the best farmer they have on their marijuana farm, and they need him out of jail as soon as possible. When Holler arrives at the Inglewood court, he interviews Louis, who is nervous and anxious. Louis immediately informs Holler that everything is a setup. Holler wants him to keep his mouth shut until he gets him bail. He asks some questions to learn more about him. Louis says he is 32 and grew up in Beverly Hills, attended USC, and works for his mother's real estate business. He tells Holler that he earned $600,000 after taxes last year. While he's talking to Louis, another inmate by the name of Dwayne Corliss interrupts to inform Holler that he needs an attorney as well. Holler instructs Corliss to back up and give them some space. The district attorney assigned to the case is Heller's ex-wife, Maggie McPherson. After a brief conversation about their daughter Haley, they head inside. Maggie argues for no bail, but Holler counters with Louis's clean record and gets a bail of $1 million, and Louis has to wear an ankle tracker. After the hearing, Holler meets Louis's family lawyer, Cecil Dobbs, and persuades him to use Val's bail bond services, stating that putting their Malibu house might delay Louis's release. After Holler heads to the county jail to see a regular client of his, a prostitute named Gloria, who's arrested for cocaine possession along with the usual charge of prostitution. Holler makes a deal with the prosecutor to give up the person Gloria got the cocaine from in exchange for pretrial rehab at USC Med. Later, Holler heads to meet Louis at his office. He introduces him to his investigator, Frank Levin. They walk over to the meeting room where Louis's mother, Mary Windsor, and her lawyer Cecil wait. Holler informs Mary that she is not protected by attorney-client privilege and that the DA can force her to testify. She is sent away before discussing the case. Louis begins telling Holler and Frank how everything went down. He was in a nightclub when a girl named Reggie, who was there with another man, gave him her number. Later that night, he drove to her house, waited for the guy she was with to leave, then knocked on her door. Once inside, Louis claims that he was hit on the head with something that knocked him out. When he woke up, he was pinned down by her neighbors, and that's when he realized that he has been set up. In the morning, Frank comes to see Holler with some news. Able to get the camera footage from the club's owner, and it confirms Louis's story about Reggie giving him her number. He was also able to find out that the girl is a prostitute. Holler presents the evidence to the district attorney, who, to his surprise, wants to continue to pursue the case and offers a deal of 7 years prison time if Louis pleads guilty. Holler asks him how Louis could have attempted to assault and rape a prostitute who practically threw herself at him. The next day, while reviewing Louis's case, Holler notices that the bruises are very similar to another case he had years ago. He rushes home and pulls the case file. As he reviews it, he has a flashback with Jesus Martinez, who is telling Holler that he is innocent. But Holler informs him that the evidence against him is too strong, and the DA is pursuing the death penalty. So he convinces Jesus to plead guilty and receive life in prison so he can at least have a chance at parole after 15 years. Holler flies to San Francisco and heads to San Quentin State Prison to visit Jesus Martinez, who's not too happy to see him. Holler wants him to go over everything that happened that night at the club one more time. Jesus tells Holler about a prostitute he met that night at the club who was with another man but ended up going home with Jesus. Holler shows Jesus random pictures of guys, and he quickly becomes agitated when he sees Louis's photo. Holler arrives at Frank's place drunk and feeling guilty about convincing Jesus to accept life in prison. He tells Frank everything, and Frank reminds him that Louis is his client. He can't go to the police because he's protected under privilege and can't go to the DA because he'd lose his license. Frank tells Holler that he's got a client in jail for something his other client did and wants to know what he wants to do about it. Holler arrives home while talking to Maggie on the phone. He sees that Louis has broken into his house. He tells Holler that he overheard him telling Maggie on the phone that he went to visit Jesus in prison. He confesses to killing Donna, the girl Jesus got life for killing. He tells Haller that he cannot say anything because he is protected under attorney-client privilege. When Lewis's trial begins, Haller makes his opening statement, informing the jury that he will prove his client was targeted by Reggie the prostitute because she knew he was wealthy and that the entire case is fabricated. The following day, during Haley's soccer practice, Maggie informs Haller that Frank has been killed. Haller rushes over to his house and is immediately shocked seeing him lying dead on the floor. The next day, when Haller plays his messages on his answering machine, he hears a message from Frank telling him that he might have Jesus' ticket out of prison. He informs him that someone's at the door, and he'll get back to him when he knows for sure. Haller contacts the detective assigned to Frank's case, Detective Sobel, and informs her of the message. She requests that he send over the tape. She informs Haller about the type of gun used to kill Frank, an old woodsman. Haller rushes to his gun case and discovers that his gun is missing. He immediately realizes that it was taken by Lewis and used to murder Frank. The following morning, during Lewis's trial, Detective Sobel pays Haller a visit with a search warrant for his house. She informs him that they discovered he owns an old woodsman and wonders why he didn't mention it when she told him about the type of gun used to murder Frank. Later, Haller meets with his assistant, who informs him that she has located Corliss, the witness he requested she find, and that he is in pretrial rehab at USC Med. Haller remembers Gloria, the prostitute with the cocaine possession, being sent there and goes to see her. Gloria finds a way to communicate with Corliss, telling him that the DA has a way for him and Gloria to be released early. Lewis's trial continues, and Reggie is called to the stand. After a fierce cross-examination, the DA tells Haller that he's willing to lower the deal for Lewis to 6 months in jail. When Haller informs Lewis, he rejects the offer and wants to go all the way. He tells Haller that he will not agree to any jail time. On the way home, Haller asks Earl if he can use his street connections and find him a gun. The next day, Lewis takes the stand and gives an emotional testimony. He tells the jury he is innocent and that he is being framed. The defense rests their case, but before the DA rests his case, he asks the judge for the night to consider a rebuttal witness, which the judge grants. The next morning, the DA calls Dwayne Corliss to the stand. Haller objects, stating that the word of a jailhouse snitch cannot be trusted. But the DA explains that Corliss is a cooperating witness who spoke to the defendant while he was in lockup. Corliss testifies that he met Lewis in the holding tanks, and Lewis told him that woman got what she deserved. He goes on to say that Lewis told him he's done it before, except the last time he killed the woman. Corliss says he even told him about her sexy tattoo of a snake she had on her body. The detectives in the courtroom audience are stunned by this information and exit the courtroom. Haller presents evidence from a previous case in which Corliss testified, which was later thrown out, and the defendant released after DNA tests revealed that the defendant was innocent. The judge is furious after hearing this and sends the jury to an early lunch and lashes out on the DA. He tells him that he just put a documented liar on the stand, a man with a record of putting innocent people in jail. Leave the judge's chambers. Mary and Lewis notice the DA rushing away as if he is upset and ask Haller what that is about. Haller responds that he went to talk to his boss because the judge wants to issue a directed verdict, which means the judge wants to take the case away from the jury and declare an acquittal. Lewis follows Haller to the restroom and demands to know where Corliss got the information that he testified to because he didn't tell him. Haller tells him that maybe Frank Levin told him, maybe he found something, gave it to Corliss, and that's why you killed him. As the trial continues, the district attorney informs the court that he talked to his superiors and wishes to dismiss all charges. The judge orders Lewis to be released immediately from custody. As everyone celebrates in the hallway, the detectives arrest Lewis for the murder of Donna Renteria. As Lewis is led away in handcuffs, Detective Langford remarks to Haller that he's amazed how he got his client off for assault only to burn him for murder. He informs Haller that they don't have enough to hold Lewis for murder yet, but couldn't allow him to walk out after what just went on. Haller enters the Lincoln, and Earl hands him the gun Haller had asked him to find, informing him that it came from a reliable source and is clean. Haller returns home and calls Maggie, asking her to retrieve all of Lewis's parking tickets, which might put him at the scene of the murder. He tells her that he believes Frank did this and Lewis found out and killed him. Maggie says she'll do it and informs him that Lewis has been released because they didn't have enough to hold him. Haller is alarmed and instructs Maggie to go directly to her sister's where Haley is. He rushes over there and waits for Lewis to arrive. Haller shows him the gun and tells him he has one chance to leave. Lewis wants to know if he's going to come here every day and every night. Haller tells him that he's not going to give up until the needle goes in his arm for Donna's murder. Seconds later, Eddie arrives with his crew and begins to violently beat Lewis. Haller walks away, reminding Eddie to send him to the hospital. Only Maggie informs him on his way home that he was correct. Lewis got a ticket outside Donna's apartment, and it will be on the DA's desk in the morning. When Haller returns home, Mary is in his apartment accusing him of setting up Lewis. Holler tells her that he is going to burn Lewis for killing his friend Frank. As he opens the door for Mary to leave, she shoots him and tells him that she's the one that killed Frank, not Lewis. Holler quickly draws his gun and shoots Mary. He calls the police and reports the incident. Earl picks up Holler from the hospital and informs him that Jesus has been released from prison. On the way, they get pulled over by Eddie's gang. Eddie tells him their friend Harold got busted again, this time for 50 kilos, and wants Holler to give them a discount. Holler tells him that this one's going to be free. Earl asks him if he's okay, and Holler responds that they're repeat customers. He'll stick it to them next time.